I wonder what it's like to be twins.
Huh?
Twins. That'd be weird. Do you think they know which one they are?
Sure they do. They'd have to, wouldn't they?
Maybe they switch back and forth.
Three Women is a film that came out in 1977 that's written and directed by Robert Altman. So, Three Women is a $50 patron request from my cousin Eric. This is his very first patron request, and I am truly grateful and appreciative of his patronage. And first of all, elephant in the room, brand new setup. I just moved about a week ago, so I apologize for the fact that I haven't been able to put out much content on the channel besides the Criterion hauls, which I'm sure none of you are really complaining about. And I apologize for any echo that you may be hearing. My studio is still not filled with what it needs to be filled with yet. There are going to be posters back here, I promise. But anyway, Three Women was a film that I was highly looking forward to seeing because of the fact that I actually watched Shortcuts within the same week, basically. And I was blown away by Shortcuts. It was a 3-hour film that completely flew by. And before that, I had only seen The Player from Robert Altman. And to be honest, I really wasn't that huge on the film, despite a lot of people really loving it. But now, after watching Shortcuts and Three Women, I am absolutely sold on Robert Altman as a filmmaker. Because I loved Three Women. This is a film, also like Shortcuts, kind of blew me away. And it's definitely the most experimental and interpretive Altman film that I've seen so far. And it might possibly be the most experimental film that Altman has done in his entire career. I'm not sure because I've only seen 3 of his films, but for those who have seen a lot of the films that he's made, let me know in the comment section whether or not this is his most experimental and avant-garde type of film. But either way, it's the atmosphere, the vision, and just the overall presentation of this film that really impressed me and just had me enthralled from start to finish. And this is a deeply psychological film. And it's a film that you can definitely tell took inspiration from a particular Ingmar Bergman film that came before this. But here it's done so uniquely and so specifically with Robert Altman's own unique vision that definitely doesn't come off like he's trying to rip anything off. This is something that you can tell is Robert Altman's own creation, his own monster that he's tackling. And when you're watching this entire film, from start to finish, it just feels like something isn't right. And it just feels like you're witnessing something that's within an odd multiverse where the concepts of time in regards to the past, present, and future are kind of welded into one, and characters are interacting with each other within this weird meshed time warp. And the feeling that you get with the last 5 minutes of 2001: A Space Odyssey is kind of what you feel for this entire film, except there's multiple characters and obviously a lot more dialogue. But it definitely has this psychological and subconscious/conscious approach that makes you question reality, consciousness, and time itself. But what's also so beautiful about this film is that even though I'm describing it in this incredibly artful and metaphorical way, this is a film that somebody can watch and just completely take literally and still get something out of it and still be kind of valid in their approach. Even though I do believe that this film is meant to be interpreted in a more metaphorical sense, this film works in a way and is narratively structured in a way to where you can just watch it for what it is and still find it interesting and get quite a bit out of it. And one huge thing that really adds to the atmosphere of this film that just makes you feel off is the musical score. The musical score in this film has an entire personality of its own and actually adds to the overall presentation and personality of the film itself. The musical score is trying to convey to the audience that something's off, and what you're witnessing is not exactly what you think. And at first I didn't really know how to feel about it because it was just so erratic and disassociated with what I was witnessing on screen. Because what you witness on screen, at least for the first 25 or 30 minutes, is relatively normal behavior from characters. So it's one of those things where you're witnessing the events folding on screen and you hear this kind of sporadic and ominous score. You're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, I hope that there is an intention behind this and it does lead to something that makes sense. And luckily it truly does. And I feel like at its core, this film is trying to have some thematic expressions about 3 different stages of womanhood. One being youth, the other being adulthood, and the other being motherhood. And it's through these foundations that this film is able to explore what it wants to say through, again, the direction and sequences of editing that were just gorgeous. There's this one sequence in the 3rd act that is definitely trying to capture this feeling and this thematic notion to the audience that there is something deeply psychological going on. And you get this sequence where you get so many different images that are dissolved on top of each other, faded on top of each other, while you have this really interesting, like, line wave that goes across the frame that looks like a wave of water, but to me, kind of looks like embryonic fluid in a way. I know that sounds really odd, but there's this really interesting choice of imagery that's kind of present throughout the film of this kind of embryonic wave that kind of just goes across the frame. And again, it's through these stylistic choices that makes this film stand out, that gives this film its own personality while also being visually breathtaking and having a lot of symbolic and thematic meanings behind it. But I do believe that this film is trying to make statements about societal expectations towards women and also abuse specifically from men that can really affect and impact these different stages of womanhood that can deeply influence not only the decision making of a woman, but also how women interact with each other. I forgot to mention the actresses. Shelley Duvall's in this film. It was really cool to see her in another film that's not The Shining. I don't think I've really seen her in much films besides The Shining. And I think she did a great job in this film. She plays a character that, well, she basically plays the adulthood character. And she's such a talkative person in this film. Like, the entire film, she just talks, and it seems like no one's ever really listening to her. Sissy Spacek is also in this film, and this is, I believe, the youngest I've ever seen her in a film. And she's also fantastic here. And she plays the more youthful role. And she has a lot to deal with in this film because she kind of has a bit of a character transformation somewhere in the 2nd act of this film. And, I think she was able to portray that character change pretty well. Janice Rule is the actress that plays a character that, in my opinion, represents motherhood. And you really don't get much of her in this film. She's a bit sidelined in this film, but I think it's completely intentional for thematic purposes. So I can't really comment too much on her performance or anything. But overall, I think that this film serves as an excellent discussion piece. This is a film that, after you're done watching it, you're going to be dying to talk to other people who have seen this film and just get their general thoughts on it, what they took away from the film, what they interpreted certain events in this film to be, especially with the ending, because the ending does end on an ambiguous interpretive note, which is, again, no surprise considering that this is an experimental kind of film. This would be a difficult film to recommend to people who don't tend to really take to more interpretive and ambiguous approaches to filmmaking, because the ambiguity is essentially the bedrock of what makes this film special and is the appeal of it. But overall, I really love this film. There's so much about this film that I really appreciated and impressed me on a filmmaking standpoint. There are sequences in this film that are absolutely gorgeous, and it's through the vision, it's through the editing, and the score is composed in this really unique and odd way that really elevates the presentation and the atmosphere of this film. And I'm really, really glad that during the last haul, which if you haven't seen the last haul yet, please check it out, I was able to pick up not only shortcuts but Three Women as well. So I'm going to give Three Women a soft 9 out of 10. This is such a wonderful film, and this is a film that I kind of feel is a bit overlooked, and a lot of people either don't know exists or just don't talk enough about. So if you haven't seen this film or even heard of it, I obviously highly recommend it. I hope you check it out. But that's really all I got to say about Three Women. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.